Buddy. Thanks for joining the Thatcher Report. I had a great week where I hosted Adam Lewis Klein, really interesting thinker, for the second time. He came all the way down from Westchester to lead a salon for the Thatcher Report. If any of you listeners are in the New York area, or if you're good friends and you want to crash in my basement, you should join us at the next Thatcher Report salon. They're very lightly branded by me. It's mostly a guest speaker talking, and they're great. And I'm trying to do this hybrid of in real life events with my Substack writing and here, my loyal listener to my podcasting. Part of it is like a Jewish impulse to bring people together. It's kind of what we do. It's why we pray with groups of 10 men as a threshold for a lot of our prayers, and also because I'm a child of the 90s and I think real life gatherings are better than online. Okay, so this latest essay, it's a short one, mercifully. The left made us homeless. Good. So I've been thinking a lot about, I always think about this stuff, but I've been thinking a lot about the left wing. What is the left wing? I think I know what it is now. And why has it gone so wrong? The only people, well, there's sort of two camps now. There's an older camp and a younger camp. And guess what? The younger camp, as Whitney Houston said, the children are the future. The younger camp is not so young anymore, and they are taken over. And us old people are on the conveyor belt of mortality, and we're getting shown the door. And that's good. That's what's supposed to happen. But the changes on the left, I think, are really dramatic and really dangerous. And the old methods aren't working anymore. So in any event, that's the kind of stuff I think about. So this new decade, 2020, kicked off with COVID. That was a great time. And then, from my perspective, the other big moments were the Gaza invasion of Israel. In the news, I always talk about Hamas. Well, Hamas is comprised of people from Gaza, not just men, not just official, like people with membership cards or whatever they issue at Hamas. Like it's the Palestinians. This is their indigenous movement as people of color. This is what they're doing with their time. They're attacking. It's not like there might be different groups and there are different militias and they're fighting each other, and there's obviously lots of people caught in the middle. But the government the Gaza government is it doesn't matter what you call it, it's Gaza. Anyways, they invaded Israel. That's what happened. Excuse me. They invaded Israel on October 7th. And it was a brutal, horrific massacre, no matter what the New York Times or anybody else tells you. And then, of course, about a year later, Kamala Harris lost, right? That was a crazy time because Biden was holding on. We were told by Ezra Klein and everybody else at the New York Times, which I always make fun of because that's my main news source, or used to be my main news source because I'm not a TV watcher. They all said Biden was sharp as a tack. Literally, Ezra Klein said that on his podcast. Totally with it. I don't remember his language exactly, but it's essentially sharp as a tack. And guess what? He wasn't sharp as a tack. It was all a lie. It was a giant conspiracy. And finally, I don't really know who's in the conspiracy, but it seems like a big news story. If you have a adult president, as a journalist, I'd think that would maybe get you a Pulitzer Prize to break that story. But nope, for some reason that story never broke. How weird is that? Must be a giant coincidence. And then of course Kamala Harris, and then she lost. She just lost, and she lost to Trump. There are some really interesting analysis in the New York Times by Nate Silver, who's brilliant, that had a different candidate run, like Nikki Haley or something. Kamala Harris would have lost maybe way more. So that's who the Democrats think should rule the country. And out of all of that is a lot of pain. Obviously, COVID is horrific. People lost their lives. The Gaza invasion of Israel, 1,200 people lost their lives, and all the hostages, and then all the attacks that Israel did to defend itself. Many more Palestinians died. It's awful. But a lot, from my perspective, living here safe and sound in Brooklyn, out of all of that ugliness and confusion, there's also been lots of opportunity for new political and intellectual opinions. So, uh, I'm privileged in the sense I'm not in the crosshairs. I am the crosshairs sort of emotionally from all the anti-Semitism flooding our country, and we can talk about that. But I'm certainly not dealing with warfare and all that kind of stuff. Um, but nevertheless, this is my life, and I just can tell. I just Thatcher report it to you, and it's been a great opportunity to kind of think differently. And so I don't know when you want to date it. It could be the first Trump administration. I'm not sure, but in my opinion, around 2021. I don't know, whenever Barry Weiss left the New York Times. I don't know how you want to date all of it. Black Lives Matter and sort of maybe the backlash to the excesses of Black Lives Matter. Um, at some point in this decade, which is now a little bit more than halfway done, millions of people kind of opted to become what has been termed is politically homeless. Now, I don't know how long that term is going to last. Don't exactly. It sort of means you're not Republican, you're not Democrat, but really the people who are politically homeless are Democrats. It's not Republicans. They're kind of doing just fine. Democrats are leaving the Democratic Party. And the stats are that there used to be more Democrats than Republicans as registered voters. Now there are fewer Democrats than Republicans. The now they're about equal, and what that means is that more people have become independent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So when people started becoming politically homeless, my time of it was after Trump won, and it just kind of crystallized just how out of touch the Democratic Party is and kind of how ridiculous it is. Remember Kamala Harris? Her solution to the housing crisis was a $25,000 tax credit, mortgage credit for Black people. That was her whole plan. It's like, way to think small. I mean, hey, I'm happy for Black people to get a tax credit as long as it's not only for Black people. But 25,000 bucks. Have you looked at the housing markets lately, Kamala? I know she's worth like tens of millions of dollars, maybe more. So she has no clue. But and Trump doesn't seem to have a clue either. But yeah, not really the kind of party that's coming up with ideas here, folks. They got no ideas. So the people became politically homeless. And again, it's four entities or four blobs that form the left wing. And it's just different than the right wing. And I don't really know the right wing ecosystem as well because I live in it. I have no clue really. But the left wing ecosystem is the Democratic Party, the mainstream media, right? Not all this Substack podcasting stuff, which is taking over the world, but it's the legacy media, broadcast and print, cable, and all of elite academics. I mean, all of it. There's like so few examples of academia that is not left. They're out there, but there's not many. And then, of course, the cultural elites, right? I used to be an avid museum goer until I moved out of Manhattan. And the curating of these museums is just very, very woke, which is sort of a lazy term and it's kind of insulting, but it's basically racial identity and gender fluidity. Don't get your gender fluid on me. Is more important than like aesthetics, and they're on a mission in the museums to correct how horrible it is that we've been raised our lives to look at art from white people. How awful! Just a terrible sin of looking at artists like Pablo Picasso, and now we need to showcase like a Nigerian artist, which is like, okay, that's fine, but there is such a thing as the West and the Western canon and art history, and it's really good. And people in Nigeria had nothing to do with what was happening in New York in the 20th century, and it's really good to know about Andy Warhol and stuff like that. And touting people based on their skin color is kind of a racist move. In any event, these four blobs interact and they become the left. And there's different wings of it, and there's the progressives and the establishment. They all kind of believe the same thing. That's another argument. So I'm super digressing from my essay here, but that's another argument that I'm making. Not a lot of people are making it, but I think it's true that the establishment Democrats, just to choose something easy to locate because they tell you their policies, the establishment Democrats like a Biden or a Harris or Hillary Clinton or Kathy Hochul, or maybe Josh Shapiro, maybe Gavin Newsom. He shifts his colors a lot. Um, they're not really any different than Zohran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders. They vie for power, so they seem different to each other, right? Because they have primaries against each other and they're really passionately angry about different nuances against each other. But if you kind of aren't in that party anymore and you don't really, it doesn't really matter to you, you just sort of observe what they're doing a little bit more dispassionately, a little bit more objectively. They all believe in the same stuff, like trans, people of color supremacy, or more like white inferiority, that they have to be the heroes to correct it through all their corrective mission. Taxing, regulation, there's not really a lot of difference. I mean, they have some policy nuances. The DSA and the progressives want to do maybe more taxing, a little bit, and maybe different type of regulations, but it's all the same framework of this kind of post-civil rights movement. We're heroes. Everybody else who disagrees with us is a bad guy. And it's about race and it's about gender and maybe other little filigrees to make themselves sound smart, like they use words like indigeneity, but they don't actually, I think they know what it means, but they don't practice it for everybody, hint, hint, the Jews. And they want larger government involvement to correct all the horrible wrongs that the white people have done. Basically, I don't really think it's any different if you look at it from a policy and like an ethics perspective. So so I think it's just fair to say that it's all kind of the left, and there's my sort of different flavors within it, but it's all kind of the same thing. And many millions and millions and millions of people have been leaving that framework. Now, it's hard, it's messy business, and that's the subject of this essay. And I'm going to get personal about it in a bit. And why are we leaving? Because it's out of touch. The moral framework, I don't think works. I think it's immoral. Maybe it was moral at one point in time, like in 1960 with the civil rights movement. That was awesome. 2015, marriage equality, which was sure it was a Supreme Court ruling, but it was built upon decades and decades and decades and decades of hard work by gay people and their allies. And I'm old enough to remember when Matthew Shepard was murdered in Wyoming, I think it was, and it was horrible. And AIDS and the AIDS crisis. And there was a lot of bloodshed to get to marriage equality, even if it wasn't legislative at the federal level. And to me, that was all good stuff. And that to me was the end of the civil rights movement. It's over. If it ended in the 60s, but maybe you can sort of make an argument that it kind of kept going for feminism, women getting credit cards and it being treated more equally in institutions, and then with marriage equality, and that's it. It's over. We have new paradigms, new challenges for this country that the left doesn't recognize, or if they do, they don't have a way of doing anything about it. Like that would be affordability, or they'll make up stuff like the climate emergency. Climate change is real, but is it an emergency? What is the right way to deal with it? Should it be politicized? Should it become the basis of everything? Should it traumatize children? No, I don't think that's super smart. Again, they're always I don't know if the right is like this. I mean, obviously they think they're right about everything and everybody else is wrong too. But they seem a little bit more intellectual, maybe. Like they sort of say, well, there's right and there, people are right or wrong, or these are incorrect policies. Like a better policy is to lower taxes if you want to make things less expensive. But the left, which I'm much more familiar with, they're always like heroes and villains. That's the whole thing. Like the civil rights movement, there were heroes, right? And they made horrible, horrific sacrifices. So many people died. Churches were bombed. It was crazy. And then there were the villains, right? And the bad governors in the South, and Bull Connor, and it was like a movie. By the time I was alive, it literally was a movie. We just watched it on television, and I can't remember the name of the amazing PBS documentary I watched like 1,000 times in high school, but it was like this movie script of good guys and bad guys, and it was really scary. And Martin Luther King was a lot like Moses, and he died before it all happened, before he realized his vision, and then he realized his vision. It's great. and it like people like Malcolm X were like really colorful characters and they were part of the debate, but then he was killed and there's no new Malcolm X. It's sort of like really Martin Luther King, the legislative victories, it was great. But that's like how they look at everything. So then it's like climate change becomes like that too. And either you're like in favor of policies to reduce carbon and you're a good person and virtuous, and then if you're not and you're resisting it because newsflash, fossil fuels run this whole entire planet and that's not going to change like that, it's a really long complicated process, then they're the bad guys. And then they have all this ESG corporate governance stuff. I mean, it's not, see, that's why the left, it's not just a Democratic Party, because it infects or it has implications for corporations, the private sector, obviously the universities, pension funds, all this kind of stuff. So there's a real economic aspect. And it just feels for many people in the 2020s at some point that they were just kind of out of touch. Like maybe none of this stuff is really true. And the trans stuff is kind of alienating for many people. I'm super triggered, as the young people used to say, but I have a huge issue with that because to me it's sort of like a key. It's like one of the symbols. I think like Israel foreign policy, it's like one of these keys to understanding the moments, and it just is out of touch. And it's sort of like, I don't know, is that like, do I really think about trans rights, or are there trans, or what is it? Why is it so important? Why are there so many news stories about it? Why is it becoming like a litmus test of good versus evil? It just seems sort of like not really important and kind of harmful, like to tell me I can't perceive reality. Like my whole life I look around and say, oh, that's a cool looking guy, or that's a cool looking woman. Like, and now I'm not allowed to do that anymore. Remember that time when you had to announce your pronouns? You'd stand in a circle with people and they would all start with the pronouns. And I always refused to do that. And I know some of your listeners probably refused to do it too. Other people thought they were being really virtuous and not like shunning somebody or something. And it was more than just virtue signaling. That's not really fair. Some people did it authentically and honestly because they wanted to be nice. But it's like, if that's your framework, I don't give a shit about that framework. And I don't think, and then therefore, if that's so important to you, and then all the other things you're telling me that are so important, like the climate emergency or whatever, or like masking with a paper mask after we have vaccinations, or if the vaccinations are even effective at transmission, it's like, what else are you not saying that's true? So anyways, it kind of creates a spiral of questioning. That's the nice part. The nice part is feeling kind of like, oh, you guys are out of touch. Now it's just plain dangerous. Now it's dangerous, right? We have multiple constant assassination attempts against our president. I'm 53 years old. I've never lived through anything like this in my entire life. I don't think any American has. Now, in the 60s, obviously, John F. Kennedy was killed by a nutcase, and it's maybe a mystery to some people. I don't know. And then RFK Sr. was killed by a Palestinian with two names, Sirhan, kind of confusing. And Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I mean, it was a very bloody time period, but I wasn't born then. I was born in 1973, and Vietnam War. I missed all that stuff. So for me, it was kind of like, I mean, I guess Reagan was shot by a nutcase and John Lennon was shot by a nutcase, but they were considered nutcases. They weren't part of a political movement. Now there's a political movement to kill Republicans. That's what's happening. And it's terrible, but that's what's happening. And some of it's been successful, right? Charlie Kirk. And then there's just anti-government violence that's normalized, and it's the anti-ICE stuff, but it's not anti-ICE because those keffiyeh wrapped up protesters or violent people, they also attack New Jersey State Police in my area. They're not just attacking ICE. They're attacking the government. It's maybe they're anarchists, I don't know, but they're violent. And then, of course, there's the anti-Jewish harassment, intimidation, canceling. We've been canceled, basically. That could be its own essay, but the left canceled Jews. They say it's Israel, but they mean Jews because Israel, it's kind of hard. It's sort of like the Navajos. You can't say, well, there's no more Navajo reservation. It's evil. But Navajos are fine as long as they just don't go back to their reservation. It's an imperfect analogy, but it's like you can't distinguish. You can't, like, as my friend says, it's like uh, we hate big orange cats, but not tigers. Tigers are okay. It's like, I don't know. I'm making a mess of the analogies, but there's basically anti-Jewish violence right now. It's all coming from the left. The majority coming from the left. It didn't used to. It used to come from the far right, and it was thankfully very obscure. It didn't happen very often. There's the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh, and there were moments, and I can't minimize them, and they're terrible, and people died, but it wasn't like half the country with pitchforks running after the Jews, which is kind of what's happening right now. If you read about what's happening in Vermont and other places with these anti-apartheid statements that people have to make, it's just nuts. So it's now dangerous. So to be politically homeless was sort of like a luxurious intellectual decision that I made, because I'm like, wait a second, something's wrong here. And now it's like, well, I kind of like, do you think I can really be a Democrat as a Jew who feels that Israel is really important to my identity? And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing that there's a state of Israel. After 2,000 years of diaspora, 2,000 years after the Crusades and the Inquisition and the Holocaust, and all of the second class status in the entire Muslim world, which was terrible. That's where the yellow star comes from. It comes originally from the Muslim world. Jews were not allowed to wear, like, they had to wear special outfits and everything, like up until very recently in the Muslim world. And that's about half the Jewish population. They just don't get as much press because not as many of them came to America in the 20th century as European Jews. But like, it's incredible that there's a Jewish place now. I mean, forget about even the Bible narrative is very dramatic and it's a central tenet of Western civilization. But even just thinking about it just objectively, forget about the Bible. Wow, these people finally have a homeland. And guess what? It's tiny. And that's fine. That's great. That's all they want. They're not like, we're going to take Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt too, because why not? We're having lots of babies. Nope. And they're weak countries and they're not wearing very well. No. We're just kind of want to stay in our little area. It's fine. And yeah, I know it's complicated because there were some other people there and they had a war, and there was a giant swap of populations. A bunch of Palestinians, now called Palestinians, left Israel, and a bunch of Jews in the Middle East left Iraq and Libya and all those countries and came to Israel, sort of like Pakistan and India. There was a swap of humans. Painful, not fun, violent, often, sometimes not. Sometimes a lot of it was voluntary, but it's not a pleasant thing, and it's over. It happened in 1948, and it ended, I don't know, like in the 50s, 60s by the big land swaps, and it's kind of over. So people have abandoned the left for being out of touch, and now it's just frankly dangerous. Like it's like hard to imagine that I would be welcome at the Democratic National Convention in 2028 if I'm like wearing a kippah and talking about Israel. It's like they're going to say, you don't belong here. And how do I know that? Because I've been told by left wing people, I don't belong here when I've shared my opinion, which I'm not shy about sharing because I believe in America we have First Amendment rights. And I'll say something against a mob of people chanting pro-Palestinian stuff. And I'm thinking about a concert I went to with my cousin a couple of years ago. And literally people looked at me and they said, do you know where you are? Like, you're not in the right place. And they didn't mean it nicely, but they were making an accurate observation. And just for a little note against this, when you hear the stuff anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, I don't take AIPAC money. No AIPAC money. You had Jewish left-wing politicians say this all the time too. I'm not saying Jews are immune to this, but they're on the left wing, so I think that they maybe have their priorities and their loyalties a little bit skewed. When they say no AIPAC money, think about that for a second. It's first of all, it's not a political action group. It's a public affairs committee, but it's obviously lobbying. But it's a little bit different, and I don't know all the nuances in DC. But it's not actually a PAC. But in any event, AIPAC. What is AIPAC? AIPAC is comprised of American Jews. That's what it is. It's not a bunch of Israelis. It's a bunch of American Jews. I've been to their events. They're fantastic. I think it's a great organization. Maybe other people don't think it's a great organization. That's fine. We live in a free country. People should think what they want. But when people are like anti APAC, that hurts my feelings because I'm an American who supports APAC. So they're really targeting Americans who are mostly Jewish in APAC. There are some more fundamentalist Christians in it, evangelical Christians too. But they're really just kind of saying no Jews. Again, no Israel, no this, anti Zionism. They're really just saying no Jews. Like you don't have to dig too far. Now, whether or not that's anti Semitism, anti Zionism, which type of hate movement is what, it's all hateful. It's all really effed up and hateful. Now, that's all of my perspective as a Jewish New Yorker, right? And I have a little note here. And so I'm going very long, so forgive me. But nowadays, synagogues are dedicating 30% of their budgets to security. That's a large number, right? And we have a security problem because a lot of the security firms can't tell a Jew apart from a non-Jew, right? It's nuanced. There's codes, there's code words, there's clothing, there's all types of ways of telling. So even when you hire these rent-a-cops at the synagogues, they're not very good. You know, maybe they'll intimidate somebody who is maybe spur of the moment, but like a legit organized intifada left-wing terrorist, or could be a right-wing terrorist. It's not that effective, but they're expensive. So anyways, our security budgets have gone up tremendously, which means we don't have money for other things like, synagogues, like a church or something. They do a lot of charitable stuff, and it's kind of a bummer to have it all soaked up by security. They're not doing the security because of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Those are, very influential, important, bad people, Nick Fuentes. They're doing it. We're spending all the money. Look where the synagogues are. The synagogues aren't in, like, I don't know, Oklahoma. I don't know, some deep red place. The synagogues are where Jews are, which tend to be very deep blue places. And we need protection from roughly half the country who believes this left-wing stuff. Thankfully, that number is going down. Not all left-wing people are out to kill Jews, but they kind of are okay with the framework of trying to kill Jews, right? That's what anti-Zionism means. That's what criticizing Israel is when it's under attack. Because if it's under attack and you're criticizing it for defending itself, then the way to resolve the criticism is for Israel to stop defending itself. And then what happens? A bunch of Arab bloodthirsty people kill them all. And then that's an attack on the Jews, right? It's the genocidal claims. The people making the claims of genocide, they are the genocidal people. Right? That's why they're so obsessed with genocide. Yeah, it's an insult. It's like the worst insult possible. But really, they're talking about it because that's what they want. And this is armchair psychiatry here, but I think it's true. Now, again, sorry, that's the Jewish perspective. From a non-Jewish perspective, which I can pretend to have, since the Democratic Party's prescription for affordability, which is their new hashtag, is to increase taxes. That's literally what they're doing. There's millionaire taxes all going on. Now, a quick digression, millionaire taxes also apply to pass-through businesses, which is my little tiny digital agency. So I don't make $1 million a year, but that would also apply to those pass-through businesses. So obviously you've taken $1 million. If you're lucky, you're having a great year as a business. I've come close a couple of times, but not that close. But a lot of that goes to labor. A lot of it goes to other expenses. You're already getting taxed through the roof in blue states, the highest taxes in the country. And then they're going to tax them more. That's the plan. That's a great plan. And I think most and of course, Democrats don't build anything. I don't know that Republicans build that much either. I don't live in a Republican state, so I don't get to really see their airports as much. But my understanding is that they have more housing starts and newer airports and newer things. And some of that's just regional, like where people developed, but at different times of American history. But, I think that many people kind of look at the Democrats and they're like, okay, they want to charge me more money. They don't build anything. And all they really have is a hero villain narrative. So the villain obviously is Trump. Well, for now, it was climate change, and it's Israel and white people, and there's all these villains. But if Trump is the big villain, well, I have a really important newsflash to share with left-wing people. Trump is 80 years old as of last week. and he's not running again ever for the rest of his life. He's out the door. And the Iran stuff and how the midterms are going to go and blah 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 blah. This guy is losing power with time. He's still very powerful. People should critique him, and there's lots of good reasons to critique him and all the corruption. But your boogeyman is not a very scary boogeyman anymore. And maybe if you had a positive idea instead of a villain, people would rally to you. And they do have positive ideas, but their positive ideas are raising taxes and costs. And I just don't think average people think that's very smart. So it's been hard to leave this. So I'm really passionate about it, and I'm sitting here safe and sound in my home. I'm not in the streets having these debates, but I just had a debate with a newer Brooklyn friend of mine the other night, trying to convince me statistically that Democratic states are doing well, despite all the evidence that more and more people are leaving Democratic states to move to red states because they're more affordable. That's why they're moving there. It's not just for the weather. California has fantastic weather. Trust me, it's awesome. And a beautiful coast. It's an absolutely beautiful state. It's got mountains, it's got desert, it's gorgeous, and people are leaving. It has a net outflow of people going to Texas, going to other places because it's too expensive. And this guy, very earnest, left-wing guy, a teacher, really, really smart, and he's like giving me all these stats about why things are great in a blue state. And I'm thinking, what are his subsidies? Is he in a rent control apartment? Like something is off here because he's not in the free market like I am and like most people are, right? Which could give me like a long discussion about how rent control in New York City that Zohran Mamdani loves so much is really crazy. This idea of freezing the rent, that only means for people in rent controlled apartments, right? That's about half of the market in New York City. And that's why New York City rents are so high, because half of the market is off the market as rent control, and they can only go up these little increments that's decided by a board. And sometimes it's zero, sometimes it's like a few percentages, but it's never like 10% or something. And so when Zohran Mamdani says, I'm freezing the rent, he just means for that part of it. So therefore the rents go up for everybody else. And they don't build it. I mean, he says he's going to build stuff, but I'll believe it when I see it. And it's anyway, so I have this argument with this guy, and I love this man. He's a fantastic person, and he's helped me and for personal stuff, and he's just a mensch. And it's like I'm. It's hard, I just kind of want him to sort of recognize a little bit. And this is not a great example because we're fine, but leaving this bubble of, but because he and I were roughly similar ages, we come from roughly similar backgrounds, college and white America, and trying to get ahead in this country, and male, straight, all that stuff. And it's just like, it's not easy. This is not an easy shift to pull yourself out of it and be like, how good is this college degree, really? Or the education, rather, the pedagogy that informs the degree. What is the scaffolding that I'm living in? And does it really make any sense? Or maybe I've just been kind of lucky because I'm not working class in this country, and I've just been able to make enough money to keep my head above water and sort of tolerate some of these great gross inflation. And also, I'm just older. So things were just cheaper when I was younger. College degrees now are far more expensive than when it was my turn to go to college. And that's not just because of annual inflation. It's way outpaced annual inflation. Same with healthcare. That one hits me much more because I've been on Obamacare since the beginning as a business owner. But my point is that for those raised in this quadruple layered left, it hasn't been easy. And it changes a lot of things to just be like, you know what? I don't think the Democrats really know what they're talking about. Or if they do, I don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. Like, I'm not going to hang my hat on anti-Zionism and trans supremacy. I don't think that's where I'm going to be going with my votes here, people. Or, the teachers unions were awesome during COVID, and they just caused a mere amount of harm for tens of millions of children for years that they're still dealing with, all that social isolation. So some aging teachers were saved. It doesn't make any sense. It was crazy. it just, none of it has aged very well. And so the shift of leaving the political world reminds me of a shift I've had. So I know this is getting a little long. The basically, I'm just going to kind of skip ahead. I stopped drinking 2 years ago this month, and that caused a lot of changes that I didn't anticipate. Uh, I go into the essay about why I decided to stop drinking and what it was like, and it had to do with my impending fatherhood. And I'm really, really thankful I stopped drinking because I was drinking too much, and I was drinking every evening, and it wasn't a good habit. That stuff is toxic. It's called getting intoxicated because it's a toxin, and maybe in small, infrequent quantities, there's a great social purpose for it. Jews have some wine once a week for Shabbat and some holidays. Many, many other cultures have it built in. And Islam obviously went a different way. Mormons went a different way. They're all having lots of babies, and they're growing. But for me, it wasn't healthy, and I stopped. And then when I stopped, all these other things changed that I didn't anticipate. I hadn't thought about. Like I didn't want to. It sounds obvious now, but I didn't want to go to bars anymore. But I'd spent a lot of time socializing in bars. They were important institutions for me, and the lighting and the music. It was kind of exciting to go up to a bar. If you're in Manhattan and a meeting ends and it's like 4 o'clock or something, 5 o'clock, and you have like an hour or two to kill before dinner or getting home, it's kind of nice as an adult to go to a bar and maybe with a buddy, a colleague, and have a drink, and then kill a little bit of time before dinner. It's social. It feels a little transgressive if it's in the middle of the workday or something. But anyways, no more bars for me. And then also sitting around restaurants. I used to sit in restaurants for hours, right? You'd have drinks. You'd have a bottle of wine with your drinks and then cocktails. So you're just sitting there for hours, and it was really social and fun. But now it's like I want to eat, have a conversation, and then get out of there. It's like half an hour. I don't know. It's like I like having people cook and clean up after me. That's amazing. That doesn't happen very often in my life anymore. But there's all these other knock-on effects of not drinking, and it was surprising to me. I'm thankful for all of it. I think it's great, and you just develop different habits. And same, I made the linkage in the essay to not being a member of the left anymore, and just really being like, what the heck is going on with these people? And I'm literally I canceled the New York Times. I'm not going to be voting Democrat we have a general midterm election obviously coming up, and none of my votes are going to count for a very long time because I'm probably going to stay in New York forever because I got a kid here, and I'm probably not going to be supporting a Democrat because the way the party is going, and I'm just going to be like one of those guys who just kind of grumbles and just like a total loser politically for the rest of my life. That's awesome to think about. And it's like that's my really that's my new reality. So stopping drinking kind of changes my reality, and it changes your social life, and it sort of some can change some friendships, and dating. That's kind of an interesting situation. And then changing political allegiances, or really I think transcending them, because I'm not a registered Republican, and I'm not really interested in, I don't know what republicanism is, but I'm sort of just want to like have political competition and have like maybe the best idea win, and not really care about the brand. If it's Coke or Pepsi, I just kind of want it to be like what I think is the better idea. And just look at reality and empirical evidence and sort of say, okay, do these policies seem to be working better or working worse? That's, I think, I think it's a little transcendent of partisanship. That's turned out to be like way harder than the whole not drinking thing. Now, for me, I know a lot of people struggle with it, but for me, it really wasn't a struggle. It was like a liberation not to drink. Politically too, I'd think of it as a liberation, but there's a lot of social impacts and religion and communal stuff, and it's tough. And I'm not saying everybody's beating up on me and I'm the victim. A lot of it comes from me and my behavior, because I don't have much patience for stuff anymore that I maybe should have maybe more patience for. I don't know. Like I want to be tolerant. I think that's a really good value. I think inclusion is a really good value. And I think being humble and questioning yourself and admitting when you're wrong and being willing to be wrong is great. And I hope I live up to that. I aspire to. But, I live in Transwokistan here in Crown Heights with the white people. And I know that's insulting, but I'm kind of sick of it. Like, I kind of just don't give a shit. And I, so I just, sorry, it's just been a big change. And I know I'm not alone in this, but it's a lonely work. It's lonely work to kind of shift out of it. And I know I have some friends who've been politically homeless for like decades. So they're a little bit smarter than I am. But, I'm sort of a team player, I guess. And so I was on a team and now I'm no longer on that team. Um, so, much as I looked at my leisure time and my health in a new light, I suddenly saw, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the change and I'll wrap up. I suddenly saw the endless stream of articles in the legacy media. Obviously, I just mostly read things with the word New York in the title: New Yorker, New York Times. NPR almost sounds like it says New York. And there was just, all the stories about trans stuff, all the stories about how terrible, uniquely terrible Israel is, how exciting and impactful these new progressive breed of third world socialist candidates are. And I just said, I'm like, this is just not true anymore. Like, it's misleading, it's condescending, and a lot of it's just not true. Let me tell you about that joke about the dogs who are trained to rape Palestinian anuses. It's like, that's just not true. That's just not physically possible. And that stuff gets published. There's no retractions. Like, they're just telling you stuff that's not true. And COVID, there was a lot of stuff that we were told that just not true. Like, oh, the virus comes from a wet market in Wuhan. It's like, I'm at this point, I think it's got to be like 99% certainty that no, that's ridiculous. It came from a weaponized lab that maybe it maybe had a leak, maybe it was an accident. But like, if you're making a nuclear bomb and it goes off, you're kind of at fault for making a nuclear bomb. So this is the same thing. Um, Remember the deathometer in the New York Times, but they never broke it down by age group. They never, ever, ever broke it down. So I was scared shitless for 2 years, like all of you. And it turns out, like, if you're under, 60 and you're in good health, you're fine. You're fine. Yes, there were some terrible exceptions. And in the very beginning, when the virus was the most virulent in March and April of 2020, it was bad. It was scary. But viruses change. And it's like many people died. It's not good, but the prevarication in the media about it was condescending and just a lie. Prevarication, fancy way of saying a lie. That's all it is. And so, I just kind of like, at this point, I'm like, I don't even read that stuff anymore. I don't listen to it. I put on NPR occasionally, just to mix it up a little bit. But then I shut it off because it's like, I heard 14 recipes for Juneteenth, muffins today. And it's just like, come on, guys. I get it. You're virtue signaling. It's so important, but like, let's just give it a rest. And like, I guess I've come to my own conclusions. Like, I don't think there are more than two genders. I just don't. I think there are men and there are women. And maybe some adults want to do something about it and like, hey, it's a free country. But the problem is that it doesn't just stay with the adults, right? Like it used to be transvestites in my era. That was an adult move of cross-dressing. That had nothing to do with children or hormones or surgery. And again, if an adult wants to do that to themselves and they're like older than 25 and their brain is fully formed, okay, I guess you can do it. I don't know. I don't even know if that should even be allowed. But, if your ovaries didn't develop correctly, if you're like this tiny sliver of humanity that really had some birth defects, okay, sure. Like people should do what they got to do to make their lives better. But that's not what the whole trans movement has been about in the past 10 years. It's not about that tiny sliver of humanity that had, ovarian cysts and really, really tough hormonal challenges. I mean, I don't think anybody's talking about that. What we're talking about is like a social contagion and a social movement. And there's just two genders. Oh, and then it invariably it started attacking kids. And I'm telling you, I'd walk around Brooklyn. You see them to this day. People have these T-shirts, "Protect Trans Kids." There are no trans kids. That's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. They're prepubescent. And by the way, it turns out most of them, if anybody is having whatever bullshit psychiatric term of the moment is, gender dysphoria, all this nonsense that nobody's going to talk about a couple years from now, they're gay. A lot of them are gay, you know? And it's like, it must be really hard to realize you're gay in a majority non-gay heterosexual world. That's got to be a tough shift, and whatever, depending on your family dynamics and so forth. Some are not going to be particularly supportive, and it must be really tough. And you know, how about we just not medicate these people and just like hold their hand and tell them we love them? Wouldn't that be a nice idea? And it just is, there's two genders. That's it. And then the other things that obviously Israel, I don't think this one Jewish country of 10 million people, not all of those 10 million are Jewish, but I don't think this one country in the Middle East is a stand-in for America in the 1950s with Jim Crow, or America in the 1850s with slavery, or America in the 1650s with colonialism. Really radical newsflash here. Israel is in the Middle East, and it's full of Middle Eastern people. Okay, so moving on. And about the Palestinians, because a lot of people can say, well, Zachary, you never really talk about the Palestinians. I do not think that illiberal, genocidal Palestinians, who spend honestly most of their time murdering each other, deserve anything beyond a demilitarized and hopefully prosperous life. They don't deserve freedom like we think of as free, classically liberal democracy. People have to want that themselves, right? That's why the Americans fought this Revolutionary War. You could maybe say the Civil War too, or the Civil Rights Movement and the American Revolution have a through line, which is freedom of people, because we fought for that, right? My family on the Jewish side came a little bit later, but like we fought for that, or the French fought for it, and that's great. That's freedom. People should have freedom if they want it. They don't want it in the Middle East. Clearly, we had the Arab Spring. How did that go? There is no democracy movement in Palestine or anywhere in the Middle East. It's just not a place that has democracy movements. You've got Iran, you've got Syria, you've got Turkey, look at the countries and look at the governments who are made up by those people who live there. Okay? All this thing about free Palestine is a white person, mostly, maybe a black intellectual, but it's a white person in America telling a Middle Eastern person what to do. It's so crazy. It's just crazy. And maybe because they were taught by a professor that that's justice, I don't know. But it's like, you know what? Maybe you should let the person decide for themselves what they want to do. What they wanted to do is be Hamas. That's what they wanted to do. That's what they voted for. And it's terrible. It's complicated. I hope things get better. But look at Iraq. You know, Noah Feldman spent a lot of time writing a constitution for them. And Iraq is not as bad as it used to be. It's not like under Saddam Hussein. It's not as weaponized, but it's sort of a vassal state to Iran, full of Iranian militias. So I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's really working in that region. And I don't think that it's deserving of that much energy in like villages in Vermont. Or I'm reacting to a Free Press article that's about this anti-apartheid movement, which is an anti-Jewish movement, where little town halls are signing these things to be woke and virtue signal how great they are. But it's like crazy that they think that has anything to do with Palestinian governance. It's just nuts. They just don't really understand. Or it's easy for me to say they don't understand. They're kind of stupid, but maybe they do understand, and they just hate Jewish people. Maybe that's what I don't understand. That's sort of the through line here. These are ideas that I just don't think track anymore. So therefore, I can't be on the left because their mainstream media tells me the same stories over and over. And turn on NPR, it's all the same stuff. Read the New York Times, all the same stuff. It's just the same. Listen to, there's the primaries right now that I follow the Democratic congressional primaries in New York, and it's like a horror show listening to what all the politicians are talking about, how they're trying to outdo each other. And they're all anti-Israel. The Jewish ones have to really be anti-Israel. They're really under the spotlight. Yeah, there are a lot of Jewish politicians in New York, a lot of Jewish people. And the whole thing is just like, in Yiddish call it a shanda. It's just a great shame. not just because the Jews are doing it, just because that's the zeitgeist. That's the dialogue that the left wants to have. The congressional elections in New York City are completely consumed by Israel and Palestine. None of that has to do with somebody getting a new bridge or a better subway station with an elevator or all the different things that we need in New York City. None of it. It's all just a fig leaf for hatred and the hero villain complex that the left has. And I'm not going to be a member of the left until they get rid of the hero villain complex. And I hope they do. Maybe they will. I'm usually wrong about my predictions. Sometimes I'm right. I hope I'm wrong about this one. Other things that I don't like about the left therefore I can't believe in it. I don't think supporting a candidate or a person based on their skin color or their gender is moral. I just don't think it's moral. It just doesn't work for me. And then all the economic stuff, I'm not going to talk too much about it. You know what I think about democratic socialism and what I just think about just regular democratic policies, which are essentially democratic socialism. They just don't have as good a slogan. I live in those states. I've always lived in those states. I think those states are in decline. I think you can measure it objectively and just say things are more and more expensive. More and more people are leaving. And there's no plan to fix that. So I don't like that. I want a plan. I don't think, so the DEI stuff, I was kind of ignorant about a lot of that stuff because I had my own little agency for a long time and I live in a really diverse city. So it's sort of like, I don't know, DEI, just like ride the subway. And then you're like, okay, there are a lot of different people here. I feel like we all are riding the subway together. So that's the E. We got the D because there's lots of different colored people. And the I is like, it's awesome. We're inclusive. It's great. I just didn't think about it very much. I didn't realize that it really had changed things in the academy and the corporate level. And I just don't think it's moral. You can't just say some students or adults are more deserving than other students or adults based on their perceived struggles, which are entirely located in their skin color or their chromosomes. And I just, now that I've been through some stuff through life and as a dad in sort of complicated family context, all people struggle. All of us struggle. Life is hard. Life has pain for every single human being. If you're lucky enough to make it into your early 50s and you're not dead, you've been through some hard stuff already, and it's only going to get harder in many ways. And therefore, it's universal. All people deserve an opportunity. You can't just say, oh, well, this black person from freaking Nantucket gets a ticket, but the white kid from rural Alabama doesn't. That is racism. It's discrimination. It's immoral. It's just not moral. It's just not moral. And say, oh, there's not enough women in the C-suite. Well, last time I checked, women have children, and that changes the amount of time they can spend clawing their way up to the C-suite. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have policies in place. We shouldn't have sexism policy. We shouldn't discriminate against anybody. But it's like not such a head scratcher why there are fewer women in some leadership positions, because if they want to be a mom, by and large, they're going to have less time to pursue the career. Not all of them. I know a lot of women who fit it all in and they're just doing great. They're killing it in the executive world, and that's what they want. And they're uniquely talented people who can do all this stuff that I'm trying to figure out how to do, all the cooking and cleaning and everything. But you get it. It's like, let's not like balance the scales because I'm going to tell you how to balance the scales. That's discrimination. It is awful. It's awful. And lastly, and I heard this for years from liberals after Trump, and I'm really, really upset about it. I'm steamed up about this one. Everybody was like, democracy is in danger. There's a fascist takeover. It's fascism. It's Nazis. There's all this Nazi talk a couple of years ago. Thankfully, that's faded because now it's the Jews are the Nazis. I guess that's a huge improvement. But it's like their democracy is ending. Trump is going to crush democracy. And yeah, January 6th was really bad. It was a bad day. Thank God it was just one day, right? That didn't turn into a trend. It was one day. It was awful. None of those people should have been pardoned by Trump. It's crazy that they were pardoned, but it was one day. Meanwhile, here's what really happened. Two very wealthy, very out of touch, very liberal female candidates ran for office in the Democratic Party. Anybody could tell you in this country that neither of those politicians were particularly popular or good at retail politics. Hillary Clinton pales in comparison to Bill Clinton. That guy's a freaking genius of politics, right? He's awesome at it. She's not. She's not. Maybe you could say Michelle Obama would be an exception, but of course, Michelle Obama's never run for anything. So if she started running, people might take her down a few notches because she's super rich and super out of touch or whatever her skeletons in her closets. But she does seem genuinely popular as a celebrity. Hillary Clinton's not. She's just not a popular person. Some people's got that charisma and they can really connect, right? Again, Michelle Obama, maybe. Hillary Clinton, and then certainly Kamala Harris, you can just objectively observe her primaries. She didn't win. Hillary Clinton almost lost to Bernie Sanders, and she kind of rigged it with the superdelegates. And that's what you do when you're in a political party. Trump did the same thing for himself. I mean, I get it that the parties are allowed to do whatever they want to do. But if their mechanisms give you that candidate, and then that candidate loses because they're not a good candidate, don't tell me about democracy being in danger. That's democracy working. And then if you say, well, Trump lost the popular election first time around. Yes, he lost the popular election because more people in very deep blue states rallied to Hillary Clinton. But both Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris lost in the swing states where the votes matter. So I'm not out here defending the Electoral College. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it should just be a popular election. But that is the system we have. And they both lost for the same exact reason, because they're not good politicians. That's democracy working. That's democracy working. Trump winning the swing states. Forget about the Electoral College for a moment. Just look at the swing states. Trump winning by a whisker in 2016 and then absolutely dominating in 2024. That's democracy. He's a better politician. The guy is freaking amazing at politics. He's now 80 years old. He's one of the greatest people at social media and television. You know, I talked in an earlier podcast about the New York Times and how it's really unusual that New York Times transitioned so successfully from print, literally ink on paper, to digital. And they're dominant maker of narratives in digital space. It's very unusual. Almost no other there's no other publication you can think of that has emerged like the New York Times as a dominant narrator of our times, from both the print to the digital era. It's unusual. It's amazing. It was really hard for them. They had different CEOs. They fired them. Different, publisher was always the same, but they had different. I'm not remembering the titles, the editor in chiefs, and it was dramatic, but they did it. They did it. And I'm sure the publishing family gets the credit for that because they're the ones steering the ship. It's an amazing story. Trump is like the New York Times. He also is an older institution as a man, and he started in tabloids and famous in tabloids, and then famous on television, and now famous on social media. It's just an amazing communicator. And the fact that a billionaire who has had everything handed to him from his father is super in touch with working class Black people, that's amazing. That you just don't see that very often. Bill Clinton was a little bit like that, but not as good as Trump. Just not as good as Trump. Obama was a really great politician too. He really connected, I don't think, in the same ways. I don't know. Obama won the popular election twice, which was not very many people have done that. I just listened to a podcast about it. So Obama was objectively very, very skillful politician. I don't think he's aged very well. I think the reason I'm talking about Trump right now is because of Obama, and Obama kind of putting things in the wrong direction. But in any event, I think our democracy is doing great. Yay, America, 250th anniversary. So to sum up, what had been a very deeply confusing and emotional time, I think, is truly intellectually and morally liberating. I've definitely lost some friends. That really sucks. I lost an entire religious community. Let me tell you, that sucks. So that's kind of like my social life. They chose moral compromise with pro-Palestinian people than courage and just saying, fuck that. Get out of here. This is a Jewish space. We're not talking about freaking pro-Palestine. We're killing Jewish people. Are you getting me a break? Get out of here. They couldn't say that, so I left. I've had some strained family mails. I love my family. They've stuck by me. The thinkers that I'm following now that you might find interesting to hear about: Barry Weiss, Ben Shapiro, Adam Lewis Klein, who's just in my house this week. He's amazing. I'm very thankful for his time. Bret Stephens. I really think Bret Stephens of the New York Times and Sapir Journal is probably the most important thinker in America right now for these kind of issues. He's still a never Trumper, or he has to be to stay in the New York Times. But I really think he really gets it when it comes to Israel and Jewish issues and more. I think he's undersold. I really do. I think Bret Stephens is really one of the most incredible minds alive right now in this country. Dan Senor, amazing. Mark Halperin, Haviv Rettig-Gur, Coleman Hughes. He's like 30. It's just nauseating, and I'm full of jealousy. He's so young and he's so incredible thinker. Batya Ungar-Sargon. I don't know her as well, but I really like a lot of her analysis. John Podhoretz of the commentary, Amit Segal in Israel, Oren Cass, the economist, Nellie Bowles, who is Barry Weiss's wife, and she's very, very insightful. She cloaks her insights as humor, but boy, there's a lot below the surface there. She's amazing. I'd love to meet her someday. And it's exciting for me to follow these thinkers. They're all Jewish, except for Coleman Hughes, who's Black, American, from presumably a Christian background. But I'm sure I'm missing out a lot. I'm sure there's lots and lots and lots of other thinkers I should be following. And I am definitely in a little bit of a Jewish media bubble. So I'd love, if you have any suggestions, send them my way. But it's exciting because I feel like I'm a part of an emerging intellectual consensus that's not ideological. It's more nonpartisan than partisan. Yeah, Ben Shapiro is Republican, but a lot of the names I listed are nonpartisan. They just are analyzing events, and they're picking and choosing. And they're curious. They're curious. They're not scolding. In the essay, because I digress from it, I talk about how a lot of or maybe I did mention it earlier, but I've been babbling so much I forgot, so forgive me. But like a lot of the narratives that you read in the press, they're really scolding and they're really condescending. And I recognize it because I'm guilty. That's a terrible habit of mine. I can do that. And I just love how these thinkers aren't doing that. And I find that really exciting. And the last thing I want to leave you with, and it's worthy of its own essay and podcast, is that what I finally ultimately realized, and I was chatting about it with a really smart guy in my kitchen the other day, is that the left is no longer leftist, if that makes sense. The left that I know, because I'm an old geezer in my 50s, and I remember the 1990s and Bill Clinton, and the economy was amazing, although obviously NAFTA has had some really horrible impacts for our country. But it was amazing for me as a college and graduate school educated elite. It was great. It was a good time. The left has swapped places with what the right wing maybe was like in the 1980s or 1970s, right? The left is now the ones that are justifying intolerance. I literally have people that won't talk to me about any of my ideas. They just don't tolerate it. And if you read the pedagogy and what all the college kids are saying, they can't say stuff in the classroom. They just get, it's just intolerant. It's obviously become very violent, right? All the violence, most of the violence now is coming from the left. It's pretty scary. And they actually believe in discrimination. In the 1960s, the whole effort was to not have discrimination. That was the left's mission. It was a really good mission. Now they're like, no, we need discrimination. We call it DEI. We don't call it discrimination, but you go ahead of the line, and no, you have to go to the back of the line, and you should get a little bit more money, and you should get a little bit less money. That's discrimination. And that's the left now. It is like the right of 1972 in my imagination, maybe under Nixon or something. It's just like they're not open, they're not curious, they're not like, hey man, if you have a different viewpoint, that's cool. We're all in it together, we're all Americans. No, they're not saying that at all. They're like kind of anti-American. If you scratch down, a lot of it's very anti-American, anti-colonial. It's like, dude, the fucking colonies are awesome. We're speaking English right now in America because of the colonies. It's great. And they're anti-Western, and it's like, okay, what are your options again? Iran, China, North Korea, Cuba? Have a good time. And what's funny is that the right is not just the opposite of the left. Maybe it used to be like that, and my friend was talking about the French Revolution on the left side of the building and the right side of the building, and Jacobins, and that's where we get the terms from. But like the right is not really partisan in the same way anymore, right? Like that Scott Bessent, one of the most powerful men in the world, is gay. The right is not like, oh, well, you're gay, you can't be in the cabinet. It's like, they don't care. They've moved on. They have other problems. The corruption is unbelievable to me in the Trump family. I mean, it's really bad. I'm sure it's even worse than I know. And there's lots of problems. The Trump foreign policy was so exciting, and now it just seems like sort of like falling down on your face. But they're not in the left right dynamic that it used to be. The right is somewhere else. And that's really fascinating. And I never would have understood that if I didn't become politically homeless. And it's a big shift. It's not easy, but it's a lot better than drinking. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I know I always talk a lot. Bye bye.